Hi, you guys, Sarah here, and today we're going to talk about the mother wound and how the mother wound impacts you, how the mother wound leads to things like cptsd, which is complex post-traumatic stress disorder. I also say that the C stands for chaotic or confusing, because it can be so many things. And the experiences that you had in childhood, right? That's another C, the childhood post-traumatic stress disorder or complex. It really is an accumulation and abundance of those things, the experiences that we had, but more than the experiences, because the experiences lead to symptoms that we have later on in life. It's the unconscious beliefs that are developed, that are processed, that are internalized, that our mind attaches to, connects to, and holds on to, that lead to the expression of those things and the symptoms that express from the results of those things later on in life, later on in adulthood, and show up in every way and impact us in every way, specifically in the form of relationships and our ability to process and understand our position in the relationship, and whether it's a good one or a bad one, or however you want to classify or justify it, right? But really, what's happening internally and unconsciously because of past experiences. So, obviously, our first attachment and connection to any other person or human in this world is our mother, right? Regardless of whether we knew our mother or not, because you grew inside of your mother. And there are wounds that can happen even in the womb. There's another video that I have that talks about that called the womb wounds. And there are things that happen inside the womb when you're first inside your mother through that first 9 to 10 months, right? And there's a lot of internalization and processing that occurs through the mother, generational trauma that's passed down, trauma that happens while you're in your mother's womb can impact, affect, and influence you. And you may not understand why you're struggling the way that you're struggling later on, and you may be struggling because of these mother wounds. So we're going to get into what mother wounds are in today's video. We're going to be talking about mother wounds, what they are, how to heal from them, and how to deal with them. So, obviously, our first connection is to our mother, and there are many different types of mother-child relationships, including adoptive parents, right? If you never knew your biological or birth mother, you still have things that you received from her. You're still like her. There's still traits that were passed on. There are still emotions and processing and feelings that were passed on when you were inside of her before you even ever came into this world. Emotionally, through that exchange and interaction of what she went through can lead to the things that you go through later on, especially when it comes to cptsd, or things feeling complex and confusing, and things that just didn't resonate or didn't quite make sense from childhood, especially if you didn't know your mother physically, if you didn't have a close or healthy relationship with her. You're left with the processing and internalization of a lot of unanswered questions. Why was I not good enough? Why did she not want to keep me? Why did she never really care about me? And all of that gets processed and turned around into I, right? Then you end up not caring about you. Then you end up doing things that harm you, that don't help you and don't support you later on. And you kind of pinpoint it back to these original wounds that you experienced, especially the one with your mother. And this can impact you so much later on in life. So a child's sense of self, or your sense of self, one sense of self, is developed through relationships, through interpretations, through experiences that we have, and then the processing that occurs internally from those experiences. So if your mother was someone who had a lot of inner unhealed wounds and unprocessed trauma herself, and she passed that on to you or projected that onto you, you were left with that as well. So your sense of self was wounded and damaged. Almost imagine I was driving home last night and we got this sound on my phone. It went, and I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Oh, there, it's still there. Different phone. National Dust Storm Warning. They were quarter-size hail. It said, be ready to pull aside and stay alive. And that's what we need to do. We need to pull ourselves aside to stay alive and realize the damage that can be done if you continue moving forward. When you're a child, you don't realize that. You don't realize that you need to pull aside to stay alive. We can't because we're dependent on our caregivers. We're dependent on our mother. We're dependent on our father, those who are raising us. And because we can't pull aside and stay alive the way that we can when we're an adult, and we begin to understand this and process it and see these were wounds from her. This is damage that was done from her. So it's as if you got this emergency alert warning and message that it says severe, right? And that's what the damage is done from a mother wound. It's severe internal damage that's done because the damage is done is to your sense of self. The damage that's done is to your sense of identity, who you are, why you're here, what your purpose is, what your reasoning for this is, because now you're an adult trying to understand, why am I so wounded? Why am I so bent, broken, damaged? Where did this all come from? And how do I get to the next best place that I can be? How do I heal from this? How do I recover from this? What do I need to do? Because it's all you want to do. So the warning was pull aside to stay alive, right? And because they said there was going to be quarter size hail, I knew I needed to get home, away from the storm, to shelter and to safety. When you're a child, you have nowhere to go. You have nowhere to pull off to. You have no home, or for lack of better terms, like you don't have your own garage to park in, right? For that to provide you protection, shelter, safety, and comfort. You're pulling into your parents, and that's damaging, right? Especially if they've got their own inner unhealed wounds. So they're like the hail that is going to come and crack your windshield and dent and damage the side of your car. I was explaining that to my daughter when I'm like, we gotta go, we gotta go, we gotta get home. And she's like, why? What's hail? What's a quarter size? And I mean, mind you, she's almost 6, but I was explaining to her it's really, really hard. It's hard ice, and it can come and it can break your windshield. It can dent and damage your vehicle. We need to get to a safe place. When you're a child and your environment is that is unsafe, that you're in a constant storm, you have nowhere else to go. You have nowhere to go that provides shelter, safety, comfort, like a true loving connection. So it's like you're constantly being hailed on, and you're constantly driving through that storm when you feel that warning inside of you. I mean, you may not, you're not a phone, right? But we have the same warning system that our phone has, because this phone is programmed to receive these warnings so that you can remove yourself from the danger and seek shelter, safety, and comfort. Our bodies are the same. Our mind is the same. It's programmed, it's hardwired, just like our phone is, to warn us about certain things, to warn us about danger. And we feel that, right? And that's our sixth sense, our intuition, that inner knowing, that inner voice, whatever you want to call it. We've got the same built-in system as our phone does. The problem is we don't have anywhere to go because you're a dependent child. So you become wounded from your mother, you become wounded from your father. It's like you're driving through that hailstorm, and it says the visibility is it's going to be 0. You need to stop. Don't continue driving. Pull off to the side of the road. And you're thinking, what do you mean, right? Like, I'm not even the one in the driver's seat. You are in your own life, but you also aren't at the same time when you're a child, because you're dependent on the driver, your mother in that case, your father in certain cases, right? And so those wounds come from them and their own inner projected wounds onto you. So it's like every time you went through an attack, that was like one of those hails just coming and crashing through the windshield. I'm sure you've seen the damage done from incredibly tremendous storms. Thankfully, yes, obviously we got home safely, everything is fine. But the mother wound and the father wound are very much like that. And your internal warning system goes off and it tells you something is wrong. But no child grows up with the belief that their parents are at fault. So what happens is this internal processing that this is my fault. Somehow I created that hailstorm and that damage, and I felt that warning inside that this wasn't right, that I needed to get out of there, and I needed to get to shelter, safety, comfort, protection, but I had nowhere to go. So it's like you continue driving into the storm, knowing that warning signal inside was going off, but you had nowhere else to go. So you just came out damaged. Imagine driving through that storm. I mean, I didn't. I rushed to get home when I got this message. It says, take take precaution. And I mean, it literally even says that when you receive these kind of warnings, take precaution. You don't know what precautions to take because you're looking to your parents for modeling. You're learning from them, right? And you're learning to project your anger. You're learning to express it. You're learning to take it out on those that you love. And you're left wounded. They're leaving you wounded. And so now in your relationships and in your life, you're feeling the same way and you're inevitably leaving others the same way, which impacts you in every way. So it's all to do with that damaged sense of self. Imagine a car driving through that severe storm, despite having the warning, not knowing any other way to get out. It's like, well, the only way to get out is through, right? The only way to get to adulthood is through childhood. So you come out and you barely recognize that it's a car because it's so broken, it's so damaged, it's so dented. And you're thinking, what is that? And well, it's a car, right? In this analogy and metaphor, well, what is that? That's you. That's you. Because you now have this damaged, broken, wounded sense of self from having come through those situations. So it's no wonder that you're either diagnosed with cptsd or you relate to it. Perhaps you've self-diagnosed and you realize I've got all the signs, I've got all the symptoms, and I know it's from a mother wound. I know it's from a father wound. So what happens when your parents aren't there for you emotionally? Uh, and this mother wound occurs, right? The damage from the storm occurs. Well, what happens is you go through this experience of not being not being taken care of. Perhaps your physical needs were taken care of, but your emotional needs were neglected. They weren't taken care of. You weren't given love. You didn't receive love. You didn't receive care, comfort, connection, security. It's like your mother got that warning, right, from her mother, whoever it was passed to from her, perhaps her father, whatever, her childhood, her upbringing. And she's like, well, this is how we handle it. We just drive through the storm, right? We don't need to pull off side road. Ah, it doesn't mean anything. We'll be fine. And to just keep going. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, and you're terrified and you're scared, right? You've got the shelter of the car, but you're not feeling comforted. You're not feeling safe. You're not feeling secure. You're not feeling cared for. You're not feeling loved. Your emotions and needs are not feeling attended to. Like you're in the back seat of that car and you're like holding on for dear life. And if your entire childhood felt like that and you had physical needs taken care of, but your emotional needs were like white knuckled your entire life, of course you're going to have signs and symptoms of mother wounds and CPTSD. If your mother was not one who provided empathy or did not help you process and deal with and truly sit with and manage your emotions, all because she couldn't do that herself, or he, if we're talking about a father wound in this case, they didn't provide empathy. They didn't feel bad for you having bad feelings because they thought, well, whatever, get over it. No one felt bad for me having bad feelings, so why would I feel bad for you having bad feelings? That's life. Get over it. That's the way it is. Toughen up. And you're thinking, oh, okay. And so now that same internal dialogue and story is running through your mind as an adult. I need to get over it. I need to grow up. I need to stop being a baby. I need to stop being so sensitive. I need to stop making such a big deal about this. All those things that are going in your mind, the stories that you're telling yourself, and you're thinking, I wish I could. I don't know how. I was never taught. I was never modeled. I was never allowed to have or express having these emotions. So you feel bad and you feel wrong and you feel guilt and you feel shame for having those feelings and having those emotions. And you weren't allowed to express the negative emotions. All hell would break loose if you told your mother what you were really thinking about her, right? You just wanted to pull off to the side of the road and pull over to safety. And she just kept driving through that storm. And if she became extra critical and really cranked up the dial on how she was with you, when you did try and express how you were feeling, especially the negative emotions, woo, right? So you were not emotionally supported, and perhaps you were physically supported. You had everything you need, you had the roof over your head, you eventually made it home, right? But you really felt terrified, you felt scared, you felt unsafe, you felt afraid your entire life. And it got worse when you did speak up and speak your mind. So now you're an adult who just doesn't speak up, who doesn't speak your mind, who has no confidence because internally you've processed all of this and internalized it, and it's become your identity, is this person who's now stuck in trauma response, going from one trauma response to another. going from fight to freeze and you're thinking, oh my gosh, right, and you're fighting inside your own mind, you're fighting with yourself, and then you freeze, and then you feel paralyzed, and then you can't do anything, so then you feel unproductive, and perhaps this is affecting your finances, perhaps it's affecting your job or your career, and then you go into a fight mode and you fight with yourself, come on, get it together, what is wrong with you, and then you go, I don't know, I can't figure this out, and then you just freeze, and so you're just now living a life of going from one trauma response to another, all because of this mother wound or this father wound, because what you needed wasn't available to you when you were a child, or you had to work so hard for it. And then you were told that you're too much and you're just over the top. And perhaps your mom was never there. And so you just had to figure it out on your own. You had to grow up really, really quickly, perhaps because your mother was absent. Maybe she was working all the time. Even a working single mom can leave their child with these mother wounds. And I'm a working single mom. So yes, there are days where I'm like, am I doing that to my own child? It's a natural human process to go through. But if you're left with severe, significant mother wounds and you still feel that they're not processed, they're not fully internalized yet in a way that you can relate to them in a healthy way, then you've still got more inner work to do. And the inner work always is with your unconscious thoughts and beliefs, because that's what creates and dictates the direction that your life goes and how you feel about it going that way, how you know to go this way and not that way, how to safely navigate through your life, which road to turn down, when to get off the road and pull off to the side and take care of yourself, when to stop and not continue driving into more storms. Just because you're used to the hail damage and you're used to all the chaos and the noise doesn't mean that that's what you're supposed to continue doing. But your mind will trick you into thinking that because it's so familiar. It's the way it's always been. And so now pulling up and giving yourself that space of comfort, safety, and ease and quietness and stillness is maybe what sends you into a tailspin and into a panic. Maybe that's what triggers you now is getting out of the chaos. And a lot of people get stuck in that. A lot of people get so familiar with the chaos that, oh my gosh, my life's not chaotic anymore. Ah, I need to change this. I need to go find something to make it chaotic. Let me go get into a horrible relationship. Ah, right? So if your mother puts you through that, whether they suffered from emotional or physical abuse themselves and they were left with unprocessed trauma, and therefore they were unable to offer and deliver love and nurturing and kindness, compassion, support, forgiveness for you, then you just received their wounds passed on to you. And you can be the change maker in your own life as long as you really, really commit to it and say that you want this. And when you feel that pull going back the other direction, oh, I don't like this, I don't know, it's unfamiliar, this calm, right? Oh no, I can't deal with this. It's so familiar. Let me go back to that. Oh, that's better, right? Because it's familiar, because it came from your mother, your first line of nurturing, love, caregiving. And when that's the kind of love that they gave and the kind of giving that they gave, that's what you're familiar with. That's what you're used to. And so for whatever reason that your mother did that to you, you can heal your mother wound. And both sons and daughters can experience mother wounds. And they're not just they're mother wounds, they're father wounds, they're grandparent wounds, but they're childhood wounds. They're things that you experienced, that you internalized and interpreted about yourself. I am broken. I am, right? That internal dialogue is everything that they said that you are or that you were not allowed to be. I am too much. I am not good enough. I am always getting in the way. And now you just feel that you're a bother. So the self-identity becomes I'm a bother. I am in the way. I am undeserving. And now you feel afraid to put yourself out there, afraid to take big leaps and next steps. And this impacts everything. It impacts your relationships, how you show up in your relationships. It impacts you financially because at your job or at your career, maybe you go from one trauma response to another and you freeze when you have to give a presentation. If you gave that presentation and you nailed it, that could be the next promotion. That could be the next level for you in your career and in your life. And that could significantly, in a positive way, benefit you and impact your family, but you're stuck in that trauma response and you're frozen because your inner mind says, I don't know. It's not okay to show up big. It's not okay to speak my mind. It's not okay to be confident because because I've been programmed to believe that I need to stay small and play small. And therefore, I am going to do just that because it feels comfortable. It feels safe. It's like you've got that little corner in the back of your car and you've just got your seatbelt buckled and you're just holding on for dear life. And you're like, no, I'm just going to stay small and play small. That's the only way to make it through. And that's the only way to ensure that I am safe. So the mother wound internally process it hurts you in so many ways if it's still unhealed and unprocessed. So how to do that? Work with someone. I work with people one-to-one to vastly have powerful breakthroughs because they connect with those inner unconscious beliefs that they have about themselves. You can try to get to it yourself. You won't be able to because the unconscious mind will stop and block you. It will say, nope, we're not going there. And a lot of people are too afraid to step into that space because they're afraid of what they'll find. They're afraid that they're going to go back into the trauma. You can't. You can't. You've already lived through it. What you can do is have this view of it and you can see what happened. You can see the beliefs that you developed about yourselves, and those may be now expressing as a physical experience. But you're probably already familiar with that too, because that's what your mind does, right? When you get when you have a panic attack or an anxiety attack, it's that same, but that's a trigger. And a trigger is there to teach you, hey, there's something there. And that is where to begin your journey to healing, is to get to that. So you don't need to be afraid of what's going to come up. You're already past it. You've already lived through it. You've already come through it. Doesn't mean it's no longer impacting or influence you. Obviously it is. If you're still like, I attach and resonate with these signs and symptoms of mother wounds and cptsd and trauma and all this stuff, and I'm ready to get it out of my body, out of my mind, out of my heart, and out of my life. Well, we can do that. We can do that very, very quickly. It just depends if you're ready, and you're going to step into that space knowing that you're ready to completely rid yourself of all of it, because you're sick and tired of being triggered from old stuff in the past, from past trauma that was passed to you from your mother, who simply wasn't there for you in the way that you wanted and needed her to be, because she wasn't there for herself in that same way, so she couldn't be. Right? You can't pour from an empty cup. Her cup was empty, right? And it was just hailstorms all over the place, damage, damage, damage. And you're thinking, I want to get into a new car. You know, that's what I want to do. I'm sick and tired of driving around this old beat up, damaged car. Now I want a new car, right? I got the warning, got it. Okay, I'm going to pull off. Right? I'm not going to do that anymore, but it seems like you don't know how to do that. How do I get a new car, right? The car being a representation of your life. How do I get a new car, a new life? Well, we do that either A, by working one-to-one together to very quickly and efficiently get to the root of it so that you can be free from it. Most clients that I work one-to-one with, it's 1 to 3 sessions. We won't know until we see where it goes for you, or in my program, Transforming Past Pain to Present Power. That's a self-guided journey. It takes you through the same process. Obviously, it's a little bit longer because you're doing the work yourself. So it just depends. The choice is yours. But if you're ready to heal your mother wound, I would love to connect with you. So you can find more information in the link in the description below the video to do just that. And until then, I hope that you have found this video helpful, especially the metaphors and analogies. I think it's always better that our mind kind of paints this picture and goes, oh yeah, that is what it's like. So just the way that my mind works, and hopefully it connects with the way that yours does too. All right, guys, that's it for today. Sending much love to all of you, from one mother to maybe someone who didn't receive it from theirs. Love you guys. See you soon.